She said it was just a toothache. But when I followed her to the clinic, I didn't just find the truth. I found a video that shattered everything I thought I knew about my wife. I used to believe I had a solid, happy marriage, until I stumbled upon the truth. My wife wasn't just going to dental appointments. She was slipping away into something much deeper, and when I finally uncovered what was happening, I didn't just confront them, I dismantled everything piece by piece. My name is Mark, I'm 35. My wife, Emily, is 33. We've been together for 7 years. Ours wasn't some fiery love-at-first-sight kind of romance. It grew slowly, quietly, one of those kinds they don't make movies about. We met through a mutual friend at a get-together, and I remember catching sight of her across the room, laughing and lighting up the place. I caught myself thinking, who is that woman and how is she so magnetic? Back then, I had no idea she'd become the centerpiece of my life. Emily's always had this effortless charm. The kind that makes people naturally lean in when she speaks. Friends used to tease that she could convince a snowman he needed air conditioning, and honestly they weren't wrong. I loved that about her. She had this way of making everyday moments feel like something more. Our marriage felt strong, really strong. We traveled, made plans for the future, talked about kids. If you looked at us from the outside, you'd probably think we were that golden couple. And for a long time I believed that too. But if life has taught me anything, it's that the image you hold in your head doesn't always line up with reality. Now that I reflect on it, maybe I missed the clues. Not the usual obvious ones, like constant texting or late nights out. It was more subtle. Emily started humming while getting dressed, little tunes I'd never heard her hum before. She'd spin in front of the mirror, taking a little extra time with her makeup, even when she claimed she was just stepping out for errands. When I'd ask where she was headed, the answer was always vague. Just out for a bit, I won't be long. It didn't sit right, but I chalked it up to her needing some alone time. Who doesn't, right? Then came our anniversary. We'd made plans for dinner, and she insisted on booking everything herself. When we arrived at the restaurant, there was a weird moment. The hostess handed her a note. Emily quickly crumpled it, laughing it off and tucking it into her purse. "Oh, that's nothing," she said when I asked. I let it slide back then, but now that memory plays on a loop in my head. She's always been somewhat private, but lately, it started feeling like she was putting on a show. She'd tell me about her day in perfect detail, too perfect. Like she was reciting lines she'd gone over in her head. Had lunch with Melissa, she's thinking about quitting her job, then popped by the store for a few things, she'd say, flashing that polished smile. And maybe I believed her, except for the fact that she still reeked of perfume coming home at 10 p.m. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe I was just overthinking. But there's a line between paranoia and intuition, and deep down I knew something was off. Still, I didn't want to be that guy, the husband who imagines things that aren't there. So I buried it, told myself I was imagining shadows. Then came the dentist. Yeah, you heard that right, the dentist. That's where things started to unravel in a way I never saw coming. Emily's always been borderline obsessed with her dental hygiene. Brushes 5 times a day, flosses like it's a religion, that kind of thing. It was endearing in a quirky sort of way. She'd freak out if she felt the tiniest bit of plaque. So she's always kept up with her dental visits. But about 6 months ago she switched to someone new, a guy named Dr. Scott Hayes. Supposedly one of her friends recommended him. Here's the thing, her old dentist was great. No complaints, no issues. But all of a sudden she couldn't stop singing this new guy's praises. "Dr. Hayes is incredible," she'd gush. "He really knows what he's doing, so advanced, so precise." At first I figured, hey, she's just happy with her new dentist. But soon, his name started popping up in totally unrelated conversations. "Scott told me about this new toothpaste for sensitivity," or, "Scott thinks I should come back next week for a follow-up, just to make sure it's all perfect." It got so constant that I joked one night, "What, is he Dr. Perfect now?" She laughed, sure, but I caught something in her eyes just for a split second. Like my words landed somewhere she didn't expect. "He's just really professional," she said quickly, like she had that answer ready. And that, right there, was when the first real crack opened up in my trust. Then there was that one night, one I'll never forget. Emily walked through the door just after 11 p.m. I'd been calling her all evening, no answer, straight to voicemail. And when she finally came in, she had this strange, almost smug smile on her face, like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Sorry I'm late," she said casually. "Dr. Hayes was kind enough to fit me in last minute. One of my teeth was bothering me, you know how I get about that stuff." She said it like it was no big deal, but who sees a dentist at 10 o'clock at night? I didn't call her out on it right then. Instead, I just nodded and watched her go about her usual routine, but inside something shifted. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of 1,000 questions pressing down on my chest. A chill settled over me that I couldn't shake. Something didn't feel right. I just didn't know what, yet. A few days later, I found myself sitting in my car, parked just down the street from Dr. Hayes' office. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that I needed to stay calm. But that nagging voice in my head, the one that wouldn't shut up, kept urging me, go see for yourself. That voice grew louder with every passing minute until it drowned out all reason. Before I even realized it, I was out of the car, my legs moving on their own. My hands were trembling, my heart thudding in my chest like it was warning me. I crept around the side of the building, trying to stay in the shadows, feeling ridiculous but unable to stop. There was a window near the back, slightly cracked open. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but I couldn't sit in the dark, imagining worst-case scenarios. I needed to know. And that's when I saw them. Emily was inside, leaning against the counter, laughing, really laughing, the kind of laugh I hadn't seen from her in months. She looked alive in a way she hadn't around me lately. Dr. Hayes, Scott, was standing close. Too close. He leaned in, whispered something, and then, he kissed her. Time stopped. My brain just shut off. The next thing I knew, I was pushing open the side door with so much force that it banged against the wall. They jumped apart like they'd been electrocuted. What the heck is this? I shouted, my voice ricocheting off the white tile walls. Is this how he checks your molars, Emily? Emily's face went pale. For a moment, she looked frozen, mouth slightly open but no words coming out. Scott looked stunned, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But I didn't wait for an explanation. Rage took over and I charged straight toward him, shoving him hard against the counter. You think this is some kind of joke? I barked, my voice cracking. You think it's fun playing around with another man's wife? Whoa man, hold on, calm down. Scott raised his hands in front of him, like he was trying to defuse a bomb. It's not what you think. Not what I think? I cut him off, laughing in disbelief. It sounded unhinged even to my own ears. I'm looking at it, Scott. I saw it with my own eyes. Emily finally snapped out of her daze and stepped in between us, pushing at my chest. Mark, please stop. You're blowing this out of proportion. Out of proportion? I was practically shaking. Are you seriously telling me I'm overreacting to seeing you locked in with your dentist at night, kissing behind closed doors? She didn't answer. Just stood there, eyes full of tears, mascara beginning to smudge, like she couldn't believe she'd been caught. How long? I asked, my voice low now, almost trembling. How long has this been going on? Is this just some one-time thrill or is there more to it? Tell me the truth. Emily stared at the floor, her lips trembling. Mark, I didn't plan this. Please just let me explain, she whispered, barely audible. No, I snapped, stepping back. No explanations. I want the truth. Are you in love with him, or is he just your secret late-night appointment? Scott tried to open his mouth again, but I turned on him like a storm. You, don't say a word, I warned, jabbing a finger in his direction. You don't get to talk. You knew she was married. You knew what you were doing. Emily lifted her head, her cheeks streaked with tears. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. I stared at her in disbelief. It just happened? Affairs don't just fall out of the sky, Emily. You chose this. You lied, you snuck around, and now you're standing here like it was some kind of mistake. She broke down, full-on sobbing now, while Scott inched toward the door, probably hoping he could disappear. But I stepped in his path. You're not going anywhere, I said coldly. Not until I get the answers I came here for. I turned back to Emily, who was wiping her tears with the back of her hand, her face blotchy and red. I took a slow breath, trying to steady the storm inside me. How long? I asked again, but this time my voice was barely audible. How long have you been with him? She froze, like the words had pinned her to the floor. I saw it in her eyes, the guilt, the hesitation. And then finally she whispered, a few months. Those 3 words hit harder than anything else that night. Like the bottom had just dropped out of the world. A few months, I repeated numbly, my chest tightening. You were sneaking around for months, and not once did you think maybe I deserved the truth? Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. I was going to tell you, Mark, I swear. I didn't know how. I shook my head slowly, disbelief washing over me. You didn't know how? I said bitterly. Here's a suggestion. Start with Mark, I've been lying to you. I've been cheating. That would have worked just fine. That's when Scott finally found his voice. Look man, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I cut him off with a sharp glare. No. Don't you dare say you're sorry. You knew she was married. You knew exactly what you were doing and you went ahead anyway. He stood there, speechless, maybe realizing there was no excuse that could make this better. I looked back at Emily, and that initial rage began to give way to something even heavier, sadness. Was it worth it? I asked quietly. My voice had no edge, just a hollow ache. Was he worth destroying everything we built together? She couldn't answer. She just stood there, tears spilling from her eyes, guilt etched into every inch of her face. But it was too late. Whatever words she wanted to say now didn't matter. I didn't wait. I turned around and walked out, leaving them frozen in that room, unsure of what to say or do. When I stepped outside, the cold air wrapped around me, and for the first time all night I actually breathed. The fury was fading, and in its place came this strange emptiness, like I was walking through the ruins of my own life. I didn't know what came next. Divorce, maybe therapy, maybe nothing at all. But I knew one thing: things would never go back to the way they were. In the days that followed, it felt like I was drifting through someone else's life. I'd wake up and for a moment forget what happened. And then it would all come rushing back. I thought maybe confronting them would give me some peace, some closure. But all it did was leave me with more questions, more pain. I kept seeing her face in my head, the way she looked when I caught them, the way she said, sorry, like it could undo everything. But sorry wasn't enough. Not for this. That's when I decided I couldn't just let it end like that. If this marriage was going to fall apart, then it was going to happen on my terms. She couldn't walk away from what she did without owning it. So I started digging. I needed more than what I saw through that back window. I needed evidence. Cold, undeniable proof. I went through Emily's phone records. Checked her shared calendar. Even pulled up the GPS history on her phone and our shared devices. I didn't care if it made me look paranoid or obsessive. I was long past caring. The picture that started forming was clearer than I wanted it to be. She had built an entire routine around hiding this. Late-night appointments, always while I was working late or out of town. And then I found the texts. She had deleted most of them, but I managed to recover a few fragments. Not enough for the whole story, but enough to confirm that this wasn't just a mistake. This had been going on for a while. And they had gotten good at hiding it. Still, it wasn't the smoking gun I wanted. Then out of nowhere, a message popped into my inbox. It was from a woman named Lisa. The name didn't mean anything to me at first, but her first sentence stopped me cold. Hi. I work with Dr. Hayes. I thought you might want to know a few things. Lisa introduced herself as Scott's dental assistant. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what she wanted, but I knew this wasn't just a coincidence. My gut told me she was the link I hadn't been able to find. Her message wasn't friendly or gentle. She got straight to the point. She'd heard about what happened that night at the clinic. Apparently, the gossip mill in the dental world worked fast. But Lisa didn't reach out to offer comfort. She had her own agenda. She had been in love with Scott for years, quietly watching from the sidelines. Always the dependable assistant, always there to pick up the pieces to support him. And in return, he barely noticed her. But when Emily came into the picture, everything changed. He started brushing Lisa off, ignoring her, treating her like she didn't exist. And when she confronted him about it, he dismissed her like she was nothing. That rejection, after all the loyalty she had shown, turned whatever feelings she had into something darker, something sharper. I hate him, she wrote. And I don't feel sorry for your wife either. They both deserve what's coming. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me was cautious. Was she trying to use me too? But I could tell Lisa was done playing games. She wanted revenge just as badly as I wanted truth. Then she hit me with it. I've been keeping tabs on them, she said. Just in case. And I think you're going to want to see what I've got. Lisa sent over a file. It took a moment to download, and the whole time my stomach was in knots. When it finally finished, I just stared at the screen. My hands were shaking as I hovered over the play button. Part of me didn't want to see it. I already knew what it was, but knowing and seeing are two very different things. I clicked it. For the first few seconds the screen was dark. Then it came to life, and there they were, Emily and Scott, clear as day. It was inside the clinic. They clearly thought they were alone. Scott was sitting back in one of those patient chairs, and Emily, she was on top of him, wearing nothing but a thin medical gown. It felt like I'd stepped into some twisted nightmare. I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing, pounding against my chest like it was trying to get out. They were laughing, whispering, saying things I wish I could scrub out of my memory. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The video kept going. And what I saw, it turned my stomach. Scott wasn't just in the video, he was directing it. Talking to the camera, throwing out instructions like he was proud of it. And Emily? She was playing along, giggling, smiling, acting like she was having the time of her life. They were doing things I never imagined she'd even want to do, things she never once brought up in our marriage. Then came the part that broke something in me. He had her in every way imaginable with the camera rolling the whole time. And she looked completely into it, no hesitation, no guilt. Just joy. Like this was where she truly wanted to be. Like I'd never existed. I felt like my insides were turning to lead. My legs gave out and I dropped into a chair, but I couldn't pull my eyes away. It was like watching a wreck you can't stop, horrible, graphic, humiliating, but somehow you have to see it through. That's when Lisa messaged again. "I've got more if you want it," she wrote. Her tone was calm, calculated. Videos, screenshots, text messages. He wasn't exactly careful. "I can help you show the world who they really are." I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to piece my brain back together. Everything felt like it was spinning, like the floor beneath me was gone. But one thing came through crystal clear. I wasn't going to let Emily walk away from this without consequences. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to watch that video again. But I needed to do something with it. I needed a plan. Lisa had just handed me the one thing I didn't have before, undeniable proof. Enough to burn their little fantasy world to the ground. But I also knew I had to be smart. One wrong move and I'd drag myself down with them. I finally replied, "Send me everything." She didn't waste a second. "Gladly," she wrote. "Let's make them pay." From that moment on, I was all in. No turning back. The files Lisa gave me were overwhelming. Text messages, time-stamped images, more videos, even internal clinic messages. There was no room for denial. After talking to a lawyer, we decided to go beyond the personal fallout. We went after Scott legally, not just for cheating but for serious professional misconduct. What he did with Emily. It wasn't just immoral, it was illegal. Sexual relations with a patient on clinic grounds, unauthorized use of clinic resources, breach of ethical guidelines. The man had broken more than just my marriage. The case picked up speed faster than I expected. Once the legal team got involved, they subpoenaed Scott's clinic records and internal communications. Between Lisa's evidence and what the firm uncovered, we had a bulletproof case. I wasn't just filing for divorce. I was bringing their entire affair into the light, forcing them to answer for it. News spread quickly. The local community buzzed with whispers and speculation. Scott had always portrayed himself as the stand-up guy, the charming dentist with a spotless reputation. That image shattered overnight. By the time we stepped into the courtroom, the place was packed. Reporters, neighbors, people we hadn't spoken to in years, everyone wanted to see what the truth looked like. Emily and Scott walked in trying to keep their heads up, but I could see the strain on their faces. They weren't laughing now. I sat down next to Lisa. She glanced over, gave me a small, knowing smile. "You ready?" she asked, like this was the moment we'd both been waiting for. I looked straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes forward. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." And for the first time in weeks, I actually meant it. The prosecution wasted no time going for the jugular. Right from the start, they laid out the evidence. Texts between Scott and Emily, thinly disguised as dental appointments but clearly scheduled well outside regular hours. Then came the footage. The same videos Lisa had sent me. The defense tried to have them thrown out, calling them irrelevant, but the judge didn't bite. He said it was a clear breach of professional conduct, and the videos stayed. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence when the first video started. You could hear the sound of every breath. There they were, Emily and Scott, inside his clinic long after closing time, wrapped up in each other like they had nothing to hide. It was intimate in a way that made your skin crawl. There wasn't a single trace of dentistry going on. I watched Emily's face flush a deep red. Her eyes jumped around the room, looking for any place to hide, but there was nowhere left to run. She sat just feet away from her parents, old friends, and even a couple of our co-workers. The shame was written all over her. Scott tried to play it cool, straightening his tie like it would hold his world together, but his hands were trembling. You could see it. Everyone could. Lisa leaned in close and whispered, "Look at them. They thought they were untouchable. Look at them now." I didn't say a word. But inside, I felt this cold, steady sense of justice take root. This wasn't just some private affair anymore. This was public. And they had to sit there and watch as the truth devoured everything they tried to keep hidden. The trial stretched across several days. Witness testimonies, expert statements, reams of damning evidence. But the tide really turned when a representative from the state dental board took the stand. What Scott had done wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. He'd taken advantage of a patient under his care. He'd crossed boundaries no professional should ever cross. Scott tried to claim it was consensual, that they were both adults, both willing. But the board wasn't interested in excuses. They laid it out plainly. He abused his authority, violated multiple codes of conduct, and he would face the consequences. When the judge finally ruled, it was swift and final. Scott Hayes was officially stripped of his medical license. Effective immediately. The room buzzed with whispers, but I didn't take my eyes off him. I watched the realization hit him like a punch to the chest. Everything he'd spent his life building was gone. He tried to keep his face neutral, but his eyes gave him away, glassy, hollow, like he was barely holding it together. Lisa nudged me again and grinned. That's the look I've been waiting for. Watching Scott fall was one thing. Watching Emily unravel was something else entirely. She'd walked into that courtroom thinking maybe she could still salvage some dignity. But once those videos played, it was over. The murmurs, the gasps, the eyes boring into her from every corner of the room, it was like every lie she ever told me had come back to haunt her all at once. She sat frozen, cheeks blazing, hands trembling in her lap. I saw her glance at me once, her eyes pleading like I was going to step in and save her from this. But I didn't move. She had made her choices. Now she had to face them. At one point, the prosecutor turned to her directly. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "can you explain why you thought it was appropriate to schedule private meetings with your dentist outside of working hours?" Emily stumbled through a response, fumbling for words that wouldn't come. Eventually she just lowered her eyes. I didn't look away. I wanted her to know, I wasn't going to shield her from this. The judge didn't hold back in his closing remarks. "This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment," he said. "This was a pattern, a deliberate violation of trust, both personal and professional." When it was over, I felt this strange stillness settle in my chest. Like the storm had finally passed. Months of suspicion, lies, and heartbreak, all of it had led to this. And now it was done. Lisa leaned in again. "We did it," she said, her voice low but triumphant. "They finally got what they deserved." I nodded slowly. I should have felt victorious, and in a way I did. But underneath it there was something else, something heavier. I had won, yes. But at what cost? Emily tried to slip out quickly after court adjourned, her head down, eyes fixed on the floor. But she couldn't avoid the stares. People whispered, some pointed, others just watched her go in stunned silence. She looked small, like she was trying to shrink into herself, hoping she could vanish. I turned to Lisa and asked, "So, what now?" She shrugged. Now we move forward. At least they're not walking away from this untouched. It's been a few weeks since the trial ended. The dust has started to settle, but I'm still trying to figure out where I go from here. I filed for divorce, of course. Emily didn't even try to stop it. She signed the papers quickly, like she wanted to disappear. As for Scott, word is he's leaving town. No practice, no license, no reputation. Just a shell of the man he once pretended to be. And me? I'm still picking up the pieces. Still trying to figure out who I am now that everything I built has crumbled. But at least, I'm free. I don't know if what I feel now is triumph, but it is freedom. I'm no longer burdened by the weight of constant doubt. I don't wake up wondering what secrets are being kept from me. It's a strange kind of peace, and I'm still learning how to live in it. But it's a start. If this whole mess taught me anything, it's to never silence that gut feeling. When someone betrays your trust, they shouldn't get to walk away unscathed. Sometimes you really do have to let it all burn just so you can start over and rebuild something stronger. And Lisa, well, she stuck around. Maybe it's just the bond of two people scarred by the same fire, or maybe it's something more. Either way, she's been there, and that means more than I expected. It feels good to have someone who understands, someone who chose to stand beside me through it all. I don't know where life's taking me next, but I know who I can trust now. And that's already more than I had before. After the trial, things didn't just stop for Emily and Scott. They started to unravel. Scott may have lost his license, but he didn't go quietly. Word started to spread that he blamed everything on Emily. He painted himself as some poor victim, saying she distracted him, dragged him into a mess that cost him everything. He told people she pursued him, twisted his intentions, made him lose focus. It was pathetic, really. But I guess when someone's desperate to salvage whatever's left of their reputation, they'll say anything. I heard they had one final, ugly blowout before he left town. He apparently screamed at her, "You ruined my life. I lost everything because of you. If you hadn't pushed so hard, if you hadn't made this so complicated, I'd still have a career." From what I heard, she barely said a word in return. Maybe she was too shocked, or maybe she knew deep down that this was exactly how it was always going to end. The last time I saw Scott, he looked like a man who had nothing left. No job. No respect. Just a suitcase and a reputation in ruins. And to be honest, I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. He did this to himself. Emily, she didn't fare much better. She moved out of our house soon after the trial. That was a relief. The moment she walked out, it felt like I could finally start breathing again. She ended up in a tiny apartment across town, living a much quieter, lonelier life than the one she'd once paraded around in. Her social circle all but vanished. The same people who once gravitated toward her charm now kept their distance. No one wanted to be caught in the fallout. And when she started dating again, the shine was gone. Gone were the polished professionals. Now she was attracting the kind of guys who couldn't hold down jobs, didn't treat her with respect, and saw her more as a place to crash than a partner. One guy moved in with her, freeloaded for months, didn't pay a cent in rent. Another bailed after using her for what little she had left. I won't lie, part of me found some satisfaction in watching her spiral. Maybe that's petty. But after everything she put me through, watching her struggle to find in others what she threw away with me felt just. While she was busy picking up the pieces of a life she wrecked, I was finally starting to rebuild mine. The divorce went through smoothly, she didn't contest anything. I think she just wanted to disappear. And I was fine with that. And through it all, there was Lisa. At first, we just kept in touch, sharing updates about the fallout like two survivors piecing together what was left. But it didn't stay that way. We started meeting up. First for coffee, then dinners, then weekend drives with no real destination. What started as a shared grudge slowly shifted into something softer, something steadier. Lisa understood what it felt like to be fooled, to be cast aside, to be made into a backup plan. But she didn't let it turn her bitter. She was sharp, funny, kind. Someone who didn't just survive the storm but found a way to dance through it. One night, after a quiet dinner, she looked at me and said, "You know, I haven't seen you smile like this since all this started." I hadn't even realized it, but she was right. "Guess I forgot how," I said. She smiled, that same mischievous spark in her eyes. "Well, you better get used to it. You deserve to be happy, Mark. Not because you got even, but because you came out of it with your soul intact. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'm not alone in it. And after everything, that's more than enough." Lisa and I started spending more time together, and before long, it became clear this wasn't some rebound or temporary comfort. What I felt for her ran deeper than that. She wasn't just someone who had been there during the chaos. She was someone who saw me as more than the man who'd been betrayed. She reminded me that I was still worth knowing, still worth loving. With Lisa, I didn't feel broken. I felt understood. Not long after the trial, we took a weekend trip. Nothing extravagant, just a couple days at a quiet cabin by the lake. We wanted to step away from the noise, from the memories, from the mess of the past few months. There was no service, no schedule, just long hikes, quiet mornings, and time to breathe. On our last night there, we sat on the dock beneath a clear sky, watching the stars ripple in the still water. The air was crisp, the silence comforting. She turned to me, her face soft in the moonlight, and asked, "So, what now?" I looked at her, then at our hands, fingers intertwined like it had always been that way. I said, "We just keep going. Together." And that was it. No heavy promises, no big declarations, just something real. Honest. Simple. I don't know exactly what lies ahead, but I do know that I'm not letting the past steer the wheel anymore. No more secrets, no more games. Just truth, peace, and a chance to build something new, with someone who earned my trust. As for Emily, I don't really keep up with her life now. Last I heard, she was still drifting, trying to find whatever it was she thought she was missing. Maybe she'll figure it out someday. Maybe not. But that chapter is closed. I'm not bitter, and I'm not waiting around to see how her story ends. Because this is my story now. And for the first time in a long while, I'm living it on my own terms. With someone who never asked me to be anything but myself.